Heading into the latter half of Volume 8, it's very likely that we're going to see some shifts in loyalties when it comes to the three factions that are currently at war with one another in Atlas. We're probably going to see at least a couple people abandon Salem's faction, and we might even see a shift in loyalty from RWBY and Ozpin's faction over to Salem's faction. Though, if that scenario does play out, it'll likely be more coerced or forced, but it's entirely possible that that could be the case. And almost certainly, we are going to see at least a couple characters lose their loyalty for Ironwood's faction. In particular, the Aesops. As we saw in the last episode, they're not exactly on the same page, emotionally speaking, when it comes to following Ironwood's orders, especially now that his orders are getting increasingly more drastic and his actions becoming a bit more unpredictable. Shooting the councilman in the head point blank without any discussion beforehand is quite alarming, and we saw the looks on the Aesops' faces. They weren't exactly pleased or expecting of that to happen, but for now they seem to be following orders. I don't know how much longer that will last. So take your pick as to who's going to turn traitor. Is it the currently sad doggo, the angry rabbit, the raging tree, the tranquil plant? Is tranquil the right word to describe Vine? Not exactly sure. Or is it the whirlwind of emotions that is currently Winter Schnee? In my mind, honestly, any one of them could turn traitor to Ironwood, or at least start disobeying orders to pursue their own goals at any point throughout the series. Vine seems the least likely, because he seems the most rational of the bunch and seems pretty loyal to Ironwood through and through, but I could easily see him surprising us and disobeying Ironwood at some point. But the most likely of the Aesops to disobey Ironwood and follow his own path, or even just join up with RWBY and Ozpin's faction, is Miro. As Ren pointed out, he wants no part of this at all. We're not exactly sure if that's, the war entirely that's going on, the siege that Salem has on Atlas, which I think anyone who is currently a resident of Atlas wants any part of, but Miro probably doesn't want any part of Ironwood's orders or a part of what's going on in Ironwood's faction at that point. And we saw how well he interacted with Team RWBY and how he was happy to have new people to work with and was quite energetic throughout the course of Volume 7, so it seems very likely that he's going to switch allegiances in that way. And after the dust has settled, I think Miro might even take over the role of the Aesops, or that he might take up a higher military role later on, if he decides to stay with the military, that is. I can honestly see him joining up with the Happy Huntresses at some point. That would be an interesting interaction, considering he did have that brief conversation with Robin Hill and the Happy Huntresses at Robin's rally, so it's a possibility at the very least. Probably what's going to end up happening is the Aesops and the Happy Huntresses are going to work together to rebuild Atlas and Mantle after everything's said and done, but Miro is certainly the most likely to abandon Ironwood's faction. When they went to go steal Penny's blade, he was the one who paused and looked back at Team RWBY like he wanted to join them, or like he was sorry for what they were doing. So he's definitely the one on the course to abandon Ironwood's faction and break away from the Aesops, or try to convince them to turn traitor to Ironwood, but we'll have to wait and see how exactly that will happen. Now, the next most likely member of the Aesops I see abandoning Ironwood's faction, or at least disobeying Ironwood's direct orders in pursuit of their own goals, is Harriet, because of how upset she is over Clover's death, and how eager she seems to be to get into a fight with either Crow or Robin. I think if she gets word that Crow and Robin made a jailbreak, she's going to drop whatever it is that she's doing and rush over there to put the traitors down, at least the traitors in her mind. And once she disobeys Ironwood's orders, perhaps Ironwood, with his new mentality of shoot first and don't even bother asking questions later, he might turn against Harriet at that point. Not to mention trying to turn against Crow and Robin, since Crow seems to be targeting Ironwood, but that's a whole other discussion entirely. And if Ironwood does end up turning against Harriet, then he will see her as a traitor, and if he does anything to her or tries to attack her, then the rest of the Aesops are going to abandon Ironwood all at once at that point, staying loyal to each other. Because we've already known that they don't want to admit to themselves and to each other that they do care about one another, that they're trying to keep those emotions deep down so that they can focus on the task at hand. That's why they were handpicked by Ironwood to be the Aesops, because it's likely that Ironwood saw that they would be loyal, they would follow orders and put the mission first. Hence why they are following orders to the letter throughout most of Volume 7 and 8 so far. But once they start disobeying, and with Ironwood's new mentality, things are not going to play out that way. And then we get to Elm, who I honestly think would be fairly easy to dissuade from being loyal to Ironwood and switch allegiances over to Team RWBY and Ozpin if she would simmer down and listen to others speak. I think that it might be actually Yang or Nora, if and when she wakes up, who would be able to talk to Elm and convince her, like, hey, the orders that you're following now, I understand you want to stay loyal to Ironwood, but he's a bit off his rocker at the moment. We need help doing this. You know, can you help us out with that? We're trying to do the exact same thing as you, and we would do a lot better if we just worked together. If she would get over her anger, because she is angry, much like Harriet, but more at people being traitors, at Team RWBY disobeying Ironwood and turning against them, rather than Clover's death in particular. So with that being the case, if she can actually be sat down and have someone talk to her, then she might be convinced to switch allegiances. Or, as I said, if Ironwood does turn against any member of the Aesops, Elm will probably realize that she was wrong, Team RWBY was right to disobey Ironwood, and switch allegiances that way. And I think with Elm and Vine being, or at least seeming to be, closely tied together, if Elm is to switch allegiances, Vine might as well. Though Vine does seem the least likely out of the 4 remaining Aesops, because Winter I see in her own little category, but right now I think that Vine is the least likely to abandon Ironwood, though I could easily see him going along with the rest of his team, but being rational and loyal, it's debatable as to whether he would switch allegiances. But let me know down in the comments below if you think that there's a scenario in which Vine might end up leaving the Aesops as well. And then we get to Winter Schnee. She is, well, I honestly think that she might stay loyal to Ironwood to the end. That these conflicting emotions means that she knows what she is doing is wrong. Well, not necessarily wrong, like the plan that Ironwood has to take out the whale is a good plan. Hopefully it'll work to actually take out the whale, but the sacrifices and the actions that he's taking in pursuit of that goal aren't exactly moral or necessarily right. And she's very conflicted in following these orders. This is the path that she has chosen. This is the life that she is living and what she has lived since abandoning the Schnee family, or at least her father in particular. She also cares about her sister, doesn't want anything to happen to her, and she's very conflicted with the emotions that she has, and I think there's a distinct possibility that she might remain loyal to Ironwood to her final breath. And I really hate saying that because I do not want Winter to die. I've already made a video about Willow Schnee ending up dead. And if Winter ends up dying too, then that's going to be so much turmoil and trauma for Weiss and Whitley and also, you know, the RWBY fandom. But remember, the first half of Volume 8 was the tame half, so I'm not putting anything out of the realm of possibility at this point. And I think that Winter might remain loyal to the end, and she would be the one who doesn't betray Ironwood. That Ironwood, seeing Winter as the one he could trust most, would be the role that Winter would fulfill until the end. And there's also the kind of idea that's in the back of my mind that if each arc of the RWBY series, the Beacon arc, the Haven arc, and now the Atlas arc, is associated with a season, then the Atlas arc would of course be associated with the season of Winter. And when the arc of Atlas is over, that would signify the end of Winter. So it could be a little bit of a symbolism there that Winter Schnee meets her end. Just something to put out there. I really don't want that to be the case. I want Winter to end up maybe succeeding Ironwood in his role as leader of the military, or just leader of the government in general, because she has the capabilities, and then her right hand, I honestly think, could be Miro. Because of Miro's ability to think for himself and not just blindly follow orders, I think that he would be a good military leader in general. The new leader of the Aesops under Winter's command, that would be a nice structure for Atlas to have as it's rebuilding. whatever's left to rebuild at that point. But with all that being said, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Who out of the Aesops do you think is going to turn traitor? In my mind, it's all of them except maybe Winter or Vine, but you know, I'm curious to know if you guys have any other ideas. Obviously, Ironwood is not really in his right mind right now, so any deviation from his orders or actions that the Aesops take that would be in conflict with his orders, he's going to deem as them betraying him. And once someone betrays him, they might catch a bullet in the head. So we'll see how things play out, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, got you thinking a bit more about the events to come in Volume 8, where allegiances will lie and how they will change moving forward. I really want to see all of the Aesops and Winter Schnee survive to the end of the Atlas arc, and hopefully to the end of the RWBY series, but the second half of Volume 8 is going to be the less tame half. And we all saw how the first half went, so, you know, everything's up in the air, and I'm really curious to see how it will turn out. So, if you guys want to see more videos like this, more RWBY theories, more RWBY analyses, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Tweet me at Phoenix Knight 7, and I'll see you guys in the next video.